But that's on the assumption that they keep changing the goalpost or goalposts.
100%, 100%
Yeah.
agree with that. So introduce me to the CEO and the board and the VC that will not move the goalposts,
Yeah.
and I'll bake you a cake.
I mean, that's it to me.
Do you bake cakes?
I got moves you ain't never seen.
I'll be honest, I still don't fully believe you, but hey, we'll take your word for it.
That's some royalty-free shit, people. That's what we do.
Beyond Quota.
As long as we're recording.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
recording.
we're always recording.
It's a slow start.
Take two. Because we did this like a year ago and it didn't record or something.
Yeah, it didn't save, So we thought we'd keep using the same technology and try again.
I know we've evolved the format a little bit, so I don't know if we just want to redo some of those questions or if we can just chat about, pick a couple topics and go into those too. So I'm open to either. Ross, I don't know if you have any thoughts, but
one thing I've been thinking a lot about is just like the sales image problem. What are some potential remedies for why does everyone hate sales people?
Only reason I got into sales is because I had a friend who I played college tennis with who said to me, hey, you should take a look at sales as a potential career path. And the only reason that conversation came about is because of the 4.5 years prior to that I spent in the hospital. I started having stomach problems, GI problems, and I went from 6'2", 195 to 6'2", 140 in about 6 weeks. By the time I got done with the health part, like I was a drug addict because I had been taking liquid morphine and Dilaudid and Oxy and like everything you could think of while being hospitalized. So I had to get off of all of that stuff. So I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, what my career was. And so, I was talking to one of my buddies and after school, he had gotten into sales and he was like, you're super competitive. Like you've been in leadership roles, like a lot of selling is like, getting your point across, all that kind of stuff. And so that was how I ended up there. And I was very impatient. I had a really strong sense of urgency and I wanted to make up for lost time. And I didn't think I could do that at a big company. So I specifically decided to go to an early stage startup.
What a story.
And I decided a long time ago that I was going to be super open and talk about all this kind of thing rather than keep it private. If you've been on a sales floor, enough of them, probably half the floor is either a current degenerate or an ex-degenerate of some sort.
Or a budding degenerate.
Or one who's on their way.
Yes.
Right?
I think there's a beauty in sales that a lot of people they choose because of sales' terrible brand reputation. But the beauty to me is that it is the great equalizer. It's the number one profession to me that like represents, this is going to, I'm going to say diversity of the world, but I know we got problems in tech sales, but I mean like a diversity of people, of background, of like, that you don't need an MBA to do it, that you don't need a hard skill to do it, that like,
it's
you can figure it out.
It's the blue collar job in the white collar world.
It's the modern day coal mine.
That's right. To Ross's point, like it's the equalizer. Like it's a place where I can out earn you, Mr. Harvard MBA.
It's just like the most foundational skill there is. Just period. Like in life, it doesn't matter those degrees. Like you can be really smart, but like it doesn't mean you're going anywhere. Truly, it's been so historically disrespected as well. Like when I was going to school, there's no courses in sales at university whatsoever, none. And people kind of just still think of it as like I'm cruising around the neighborhood trying to sell knives and banging on doors
and trying to force my way into homes to sell you swampland in Florida or used car lot before you could get any information about the car online. Do you feel like it's changing a little bit? Do you feel like any of the perception is changing or softening a little bit or no?
I think yes, I think it is changing. I saw it at Stanford. I mean, I think, there was a big moment in one of my classes where former chairman of JetBlue was like, your CEO works for your top salesperson. And I felt like all 80 people in the class just like, look at me. And I was like, that's right, motherfucker. That's right. All these folks who hadn't considered it, they're starting to realize, oh, that's, yeah, I see how this is important now. And it's hard to know until you're truly put in that position where you're fighting for your professional life.
The original salespeople were commission only, eat what you kill.
Yeah.
And then it moved to, okay, you got a salary, but it may be like a 30-70 split where the base is low and the variable is high. And then it's been, call it 50-50 splits for a while. And then even the arena that you play in, like there's not that many, boiler room kind of environments anymore, at least in B2B. Yeah. Those have kind of died off, and you see people no longer hyper focused on, you need to make 200 calls a day, Pouyan, or it's a wrap, like, get out of here. And now you have people kind of questioning commission models and, quota and that kind of thing. And the chatter about like, why do we even have quota? Why? There's a lot of people who've talked about it. I think Sahil has talked about it. I think John Barrows has talked about it before. And, you see some of those kind of conversations. And, I think the attitude and perception is changing and softening a little bit. And I think we're doing ourselves a little bit of a favor as well, because the internet has empowered buyers so much. Like these like pushy kind of shiesty tactics that people could get away with before. Like you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
You just can't. It's not gonna work. So people are selling in a much more thoughtful kind of like consultative, manner, because the buyer is informed. So, it might be a slow evolution, but there's signals in a lot of places, I think, that the perception is changing.
Wait, I was going to say, when you say the perception is changing, perception from whose perspective?
I would say the general public, people who are kind of not in sales or in the business whatsoever. So, people who are, I'm trying to think of who my neighbors are. Like I got a pharmacist, there's a teachers, there's a nurse. Like these people who are my neighbors still kind of give me shit. Like, oh, that's the salesman type thing. Right. But I think some of that stuff is starting to evolve a little bit, because I think general public is having better experiences when they have to interact with salespeople. Right. And then inside the industry, I think there's so much, it's almost overwhelming at times. Don't sell this way. You can't be that, shiesty person anymore. It's not a volume-based game. Don't do it. Customer first, right? Value selling, all this kind of stuff. You can't get away from it. So, those are signals. I'm by no means trying to say that it's like massively changed. I just think that it's evolving a little bit, the perception.
I think, and I was shaking my head a little bit earlier, because I think I don't think it's changed all that much, but I do agree with you, Scott, that I think it's trending in that way. And there are those signals that you're talking about. And Ross was talking about the classes at Stanford. They didn't have anything on sales. When I was going through the MBA program, but I believe they have some now, and it's been a few years that they have it. My only concern with it, though, is I wonder if, just relating back to some of the other courses that I had, and I took some on like entrepreneurship and some of this other stuff, most of that stuff was just also theoretical, that it was useless. And I wonder if that's also, in terms of the classes on sales, if it is still very theoretical on like, how do you design the sales process and how do you approach, or even just thinking about sales. Now, don't get me wrong. It's great that I think the appreciation of sales is there. There's more of a spotlight on it, that it's an important enough skill set or competency that it deserves it, not courses, and it deserves attention. But I think, Ross, what you said is just so spot on. And just from my own personal experience, until your own personal success depends on you having to sell something, I don't think you fully grasp it. Because you can learn the theoretical stuff all day long, but until you actually need to do a cold call, until you actually need to deliver some results, or, whether it's your quota, whether it's your company, whether it's your product, doesn't get to where you need it to go. That for me was the moment that I was like, whoa, shit. Like, this is something really important that I need to learn, that no one had taught, not at Harvard, not at Y Combinator, nothing else. And it was just picking up books, reading them, finding other salespeople I could learn from them. But I think the best was just straight up doing it and saying, and it's a recognition of how important of a skill set it is, and saying, I'm gonna keep doing this until I become decent at it, or at least decent enough to make some progress, and then hopefully become great at it one day. So I don't know what you're.
I'd say I'll take it. This, at least it's some level of progress.
And I would say the other piece that I'm seeing, and maybe this is just our approach to sales at Scratchpad, but I have to believe that a lot of companies that are more bottom up or product led growth are leading this way too. Is the approach to selling is different, and our approach is very much one that is one that's very much like you talked about, with leading with what we call about is leading with giving, and you call it consultative or what have you, but it's a very different flow than I think traditionally has existed in B2B SaaS, which is, all right, like, you're on a call, I'm just here to qualify you. I'm just here to see like what I can sell you. And I think that piece of it too, I'm realizing that it's a slightly different skill set than a lot of salespeople I talk to. And so I wonder what that might mean for folks that enter sales going forward, and saying like, hey, okay, it's not that pushy, you have to buy, and then from the perception being like, oh my gosh, there's a salesperson, like, what are they going to try to sell me now?
If that can trickle across like the universities and into communities and whatnot, like, these things start to be opportunities, and maybe we get some more diversity into sales roles. And then over time, that means the leadership in these selling organizations becomes more diverse, right? And that starts to further evolve how these organizations are run and the power dynamics, therein.
Do you think the world of sales is going to consolidate? Do you think that like this kind of like there's going to one day be kind of a SEAL team 6 of sales folks, and we don't need 500 SDRs and 800 AEs, and it's just going to be like a smaller team that's just better?
I hope so. Yeah, I really do. I mean, imagine like for a second that me and you team up and we get like another 10, 12 buddies, that have been in this game for a while, and we're all really good. And it's just like Navy strike team, right? Pouyan hires us for 6 to 12 months. We're going to scale him so fast. He's going to get to this much bigger number than he'd ever get to before. And then we dip out. And then we go do it again for another company. I can totally see that happening. I could also see people no longer working for one organization at a time as a salesperson, right? What do you care? Let's say I work for Pouyan and I'm your senior account executive. If I hit my numbers for you, what do you care if the other half of my day is spent working for XYZ company that's not a competitor?
Right.
Totally different. So I'm getting 2 salaries and 2 commission checks. As long as I hit my number, what do you care? I can see that world potentially, evolving.
I could see. I mean, I could see that working, and I could actually see that being really beneficial for certain salespeople, right? Because you get a lot of flexibility, you get a lot more freedom. Your earning potential can go up, especially if you're hitting your number and you're not having to put in, the full 100% time, because then you can distribute. You can diversify your income stream, which I think can be helpful. But I think from being on the other side, now thinking about growing a company where sales is such an important part of it, and growing a sales team, I do think there are certain side effects of that, though. So number one, I think it depends on how you view sales culture and like what role sales actually plays within the company. So for us, while certainly like hitting numbers is important, we actually ask of our salespeople to share a lot of their insights. And so to us, it is much more than just a transactional, all right, hit the number and that's it, go off and come back and tomorrow hit the same number. There's so many insights that we've gathered that feed right back into our design process and product development from the salespeople. And it's one of the things that we actually look for in the interview process and hire folks to say, like, we want to hear from you, right? Like, we want your voice to be heard. on all of these things. And so I think if it were more mercenary or transactional, like we would miss out on all of that. And sure, we could hit our number and maybe in the short term we'd get a big spike. But thinking about how we would scale this thing like 5 years from now, I think being able to build that portion of it in would certainly be something that I guess I would like think about and say, how can we make sure that we get that benefit as well from this function called sales?
I just feel like I could deliver you all of that and do it for somebody else at the same time.
Yeah, that I'm not, that part of it I'm not opposed to
Not
at all.
just hitting numbers, but like the feedback loop for product and like participate in the culture and all that kind of stuff. Like no one will convince me right now that salespeople are working their tail off 9 hours a day. They're sprinting and stopping, and there's a nice life balance there. Okay. They're doing a little bit of work for 90 minutes and then they're watching a fucking Netflix episode and then they're jumping back on and they do a little work and then they go walk the dog and then they do a little. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But for some people, an overachiever type kind of person or somebody who's very like career oriented, money hungry, like I could do those things you're talking about and also do it at another company.
So two things there. One, that I could see. I was referring to the short term, come in, hit the number, like grow it and then scale it and then move on. Like that piece of it was the piece you'd miss out on so much. But let me ask you this though. If you're hitting your number, it means you're being successful. Why not keep going where you're already successful and make even more money there instead of having to
I can tell you exactly why, because most people will change the commission plan and fuck me and not let me get that much money. You move the goalpost on me, and the uncapped commission is not really uncapped. So what we find is
it's just impossible.
It's impossible, right? It's impossible. So okay. So let's say I'm making $500,000 a year selling for Scratchpad, and one person's stance is like, well, you should pour more of your energy and efforts into Scratchpad. I could do that, but you're going to keep moving the number on me historically. So I really can only get to like this 500K kind of marker. I can't ever really get behind, farther than it or beyond it. Meanwhile, I could just take this other gig over here that's going to give me $150,000 base and give me another 400K OT, and I get stock options in both places. Why? That's guaranteed money versus optional or versus variable money.
But that's on the assumption that they keep changing the goalpost or goalpost.
100% agree with that. So introduce me to the CEO and the board and the VC that will not move the goalpost, and I'll bake you a cake.
I mean, that's it to me.
You bake cakes?
I got moves you ain't never seen. I got moves you've never seen.
I'm a
slice of his cake
for myself.
You will be so high.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I'll make sure not to eat that cake right before going into a board meeting. If the
goalpost didn't get moved, then you have a point. But nobody keeps the goalposts, in place.
Why do you think that is?
Because hypergrowth, man. Because we got 10x this bitch.
Because greed.
Yeah, like that's my thing has always been like exactly what Scott. You go find me a sales team that's like, honestly, man, we need more heads because we cannot handle the demand right now. Like this just sucks. We are letting deals slip through the cracks. No one, none, zero. Exactly zero people would ever admit to like letting deals slip through the cracks because we have too much inbound. Maybe you do have like a lot of inbound that isn't getting like covered if you're like right at the very beginning. But for the most part, like I have never been like too busy to work on another active like deal. I haven't. And had to like push off a deal like shit, I got to prioritize these deals, which one's like worth more and blah blah blah. No, I want to work them all. So it's just the cycle just repeats. It just keeps repeating. And then salespeople go try and look for the next company, and then we're like, well, let's fuck them over on options, and let's like, and then that's the whole other piece.
Except now what you see is rather than people going to work for other companies and double dipping, they just go work for themselves on the side.
Yeah.
How many, if I rewind the tape to 2016 when I first started at Qualia, I would guess that like 10 to 20% of the employees had some kind of side hustle. I bet you that number is like 60, 70% at this point. whatever those things are, consulting, coaching, products, influencers,
we talked about this in
whatever they
another
are.
episode on like becoming creators.
So
Yeah.
so that you
I've
can
talked
make.
to a bunch of folks who are selling stuff now, going into e-commerce because that's become easier.
Yeah. So rather than double dipping and serving two masters who will move the numbers on me, people are like, you know what? I could do this thing on my own, control my own destiny with it a little bit, right? So people just get greedy. Like that person that's worth 20 billion just can't stand not being worth 30 billion. That's how I look at it.
And so, like, you know, I think going all the way back to the original question at the beginning is, well, how do you change something like this? Because Ben and I were talking about this earlier today. It's like, prospects pick up a cold call. They're like, oh shit, a salesperson, their backs are against the wall. The salesperson's like, hey, motherfucker, I'm already back against the wall because I have to hit numbers. So I'm probably, going to be a little bit like outside of what I really want to be, but I'm sort of like got my back against a different wall. And so you create this like conflict of interest between, you know, putting the buyer first and like respecting your prospects. It's like, no, I'm trying to survive. I'm trying not to die over here. So like, there's this already like a perverse incentives to close business. That goes back to the quota thing. Do we get rid of quota? Like, what are, maybe there's no real answer, but like ways that we can, systemic changes that could be made to change the way salespeople have to behave, therefore change the ways that prospects view salespeople?
Some of it has to do with the hyper growth stuff that you talked about and the insanity of valuations and, you know, having to take on, I mean, every day I see somebody who raised, you know, 250 million in like a series B and they have like 5 million ARR. And I'm like, what? Like, what are we doing? You know? So just not putting ourselves in those kind of situations, maybe a lot more tempered growth, a lot longer, you know, kind of bootstrapping before any capital is infused whatsoever. Maybe a more balanced cap table where a founder doesn't keep 35 to 40% of the options, and the VP of sales gets 1 point if they're lucky, right? And just a more like socialist kind of balancing act. You know, when the last place that I worked, like every single one of my sales managers had the same goal. They didn't have sales teams where like Pouyan's team hit their number, so he's getting paid. Ross's team missed, and I'm over here as the VP of sales. I missed. Like we all had one number, the same number. No different teams. Total like socialist structure. It's still operating like that, even 2 years after I left that. So there's a transparency there, and a like we're all in this together versus us versus them kind of dynamic. You know, you could change the incentives a little bit so salespeople are not the only people on the hook if they have a target. When was the last time a VP of marketing got fired for not hitting KPIs? I have no idea. When was the last time the VP of CS got fired because they didn't hit the retention number or the upsell number? I have no idea. Has a fucking VP of product or engineer ever been fired for being late on their release date too many times? Not that I know of. So why are we the ones with our neck in the guillotine all the time? There's something to explore there. Maybe just pay everybody and take away the quota. Give that a run. Maybe that would help. Maybe we build better products that solve real pain and are not like nice to have kind of solutions. So the product does a lot of the selling for itself.
And I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I'm curious just to get your quick thoughts on this, Scott. In the world that you described of or if you get rid of quota, right? And I could see a lot of the arguments for that. How do you reconcile the salespeople that are really like numbers driven, goal driven, top performers, want to be top of the pack and want to get paid for it?
How do you do that with the engineers right now that want to be the top of the pack and the best of the best?
I don't know if that translates exactly in that way. And I don't know. I don't have the answers to this, but I do know that, like, I know a lot of salespeople, and we talk to a lot of them that they're there to win. Whatever it is, they want to outperform everybody else. right? And I think with sales, the way that it's measured, and I think if you were to find a way to measure the output of engineering, that might then translate. I just haven't seen it, right? I guess you could maybe measure lines of code written, quality of code, number of bugs, but in sales,
Sounds like you just found metrics.
But I don't know if those are the metrics that matter. I mean, you can come up with metrics for anything, right? But they could be vanity metrics, bullshit metrics.
Well, listen, we've been getting fired for 50 years on vanity metrics, so we can swing a little bit that way.
Yeah, but I don't think revenue is a vanity metric, right? I think that's something that.
But you're aware that we've been fired based on more than just revenue, right?
No, for sure. I'm just saying in the world where if I'm a salesperson, there's two options I've got, right? I can go, or maybe I'll call it three, right? There was it's quota only. There's no base. Like you just take what you get.
Commission only. Yeah.
Commission only, right? Yeah. Sorry. Commission only there. You've got the 50-50, which seems to be fairly traditional, half base, half commission.
Yeah.
And then there's the other world, which is all there. There is no commission, right? You get rid of quotas.
Yeah. So
I'm just saying in that world, I was curious, like how does that work?
Oh, you just have to
bonus.
Yeah. Or just pay everybody the top end, because that's the value of a top seller. If I hire a top engineer, I'm going to pay top engineering salary. I'm not going to make them earn it. I'm not going to make them perform in order to get it. So let's say commission only, like realistically, somebody can earn $300K. On the 50-50 split, somebody has a $150K base and a $300K OTE. In the no quota situation, just pay Scott $300K, because
that I get. I think the assumption I'm making though that maybe we may be off on is I'm assuming a no cap commission. I'm assuming your commission rate, you even have accelerators on top. So if you perform more, you are getting paid more, right? Like you are actually.
I just don't believe that there is actually a real uncapped commission situation, because it becomes at a certain point physically impossible to attain or do more. Or I blow it so far out of the water that the CEO calls me up and is like, listen, you did 9,000% to goal. I'm not prepared to cut you a $700,000 commission check this month. So instead of the normal 12% commission that you're going to get, once you close deals over $1 million, we actually drop your commission percent to 1%. So I don't know anybody who has a true uncapped commission potential. Not even a drug dealer. Even a drug dealer has limitations put upon it by the supply. I don't know where that exists. Everybody talks about uncapped commissions, but there is a cap. It's just invisible, but it's there.
Yeah. The cap has been considered by the person drawing up the comp plan. They have figured out the max.
Okay. Yeah. If there is truly a cap in that world, then yeah, I see it. But I think
if you can draw it up without it, then I think your argument carries weight.
Yeah.
I just don't know anybody.
Maybe it comes at a scale. For what it's worth, we legit don't have caps on commission, and we have pretty healthy accelerators on top of it. And just from my perspective, I would be that CEO that would be happy to write that check.
Well, I hope everybody who's interested in a sales role is listening to Pouyan right now and rushing to apply to Scratchpad, because that's super rare.
I mean, and I'll admit, I may be missing something that maybe changes once you get to a certain scale. I don't know. Like,
it would be interesting. It would be interesting to have one of your salespeople on here and be like, realistically, what's the most money that you can make here?
Yeah, and I would be happy to actually do that. Take that challenge, because we have one that, I mean, we haven't been selling for all that long, but I think we even had anyone even a full year, but one's like already hit 100, is well beyond 100% of quota, and the accelerators kick in, and I will be happy for that person to receive that check, because they performed and they outperformed, right? And not only for themselves, but they did it for the team and the company.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that's the piece that, at least my perspective on it, is sales isn't just a silo. Like, sales is such an integrated part of the company that if you
Right.
are
So
if there's pressure put on you.
so please put everybody else's head in the guillotine the same exact way, because we don't exist in a silo. So we should just have one revenue number, all of us. Marketing, sales, CS, we have one revenue number, and we all do our part to get there. We either win together or we lose together. No CS VP runs and signs that DocuSign. No VP of marketing is signing off on that Panda doc. They won't do it. And sure as shit, no engineering manager will do this. I have this debate with my brother all the time, Pouyan, who you know, who's engineering, senior engineering leader at Twitter, and he's like, that would never work. And I'm like, why? Well, you can't measure it. And then he spits out these KPIs, and I'm like, you can measure that. He's like, yeah, but like, blah, blah, blah. There's always a fucking excuse. There's always some excuse why they can't be held as accountable as we can.
Well, I think there is something. Well, there is something there, because if you unpack it, I know we're right at time, but I think the accountability piece that should be leadership. Leadership should, in my view, like you should hold every person, department, function accountable. It's just the way they're held accountable, or how you measure that accountability is going to look different. And I think alignment is what matters. Is, am I being held accountable on the things that I actually have control over, and that then impact the business in that right way? So for example, it wouldn't be,
So if I'm your VP of sales and I miss my sales target 2 quarters in a row, would you fire me?
It depends on the context. If you didn't have
no extenuating circumstances, I'm a good employee, I work hard, I'm doing my best, but like we're hitting like 77% to goal, 72% to goal, right? Like VPs of sales get fired all the time, every day, for that exact scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. But the question is,
but VPs of engineering or product miss release cycles 2 quarters in a row, and nothing ever happens to them. So
not here. I mean,
fair enough. You'll be the first. When you fire somebody who misses 2 releases, please make a post about it, because every salesperson on the planet will like it, and it will be the most liked post in LinkedIn history.
No, but I think, again, it all depends, in my view, it depends on how you're measuring success in the first place. What are those core outcomes that you're measuring for that role or for that department? And how is that person performing against those? And sometimes, and I think the challenging part in sales is you could hit 70% and you blew it out of the water, because really what you should have hit was 50%. Because there was a fundamental issue in the product. There were, marketing didn't deliver the lead, so you did. So that's why I said it all depends. You have to look at it in context.
Well, you are a gentleman and a scholar. I can't even begin to tell you how rare it is that a founder would think that way. Just that sentence that you just uttered. Well, you only should have hit 50%, so you actually massively overachieved. Never did I hear that. Never did I hear that in 17
Sachs
years.
has never said that in his life.
We'll reset the perception, man. We'll start resetting the perception a little bit by little bit here.
This is how it changes, maybe, right? Yeah. One brick at a time. One Pouyan Scratchpad at a time.
I think we put all the engineers' metrics up on TVs around the office, so we can see how many bugs each one of them is responsible for. And then we take the CS people. We put them up there too. How well you're renewing people.
That'd be great.
How much work are you doing?
Activity metrics up there. Listen, for what it's worth, we do some version of that here at Scratchpad. We run on cycles, and every 2 weeks we actually have, in the same way that sales commits to a number, we actually have engineering and product commit to their objectives, and we look at how far did we go on those objectives. And it's hard, because there's certain things you absolutely don't have control over, but it is working, and it follows that same model. And I think the idea of scoping things properly, committing, and then being held accountable for it.
But there's also a misconception that sales has control over everything too, which
they don't. No. Listen,
there's so much shit out of your control. It's like, she had a bad dream about our product and now she doesn't want to buy. Like, okay, that's my bad.
Or sometimes it happens, like that business, that your key champions, even if you're multi-threaded and you have everything there, the key person that was going to sign is no longer there. Like that shit happens all the time, and it impacts the deal. Like, is that the salesperson's fault? No.
Yeah. Well, historically, that person gets fired. And so what you end up with is people like me who are super defensive about it and have PTSD for themselves and all of their employees because they've been through scenarios where people don't think and operate the way that you're talking about, you know? And that
it might be cool to do another session on how do you unpack that before joining a company, right? To see like, how do you learn how folks are either promoted or fired.
That would be a well-attended live webinar in the middle of the day.
We'll follow up on that. Scott, thanks so much for joining us, man. This was awesome.
The man, Scott.
Appreciate you both.
Beyond Quota.